The gunshot that tore through the stagecoach window missed Olivia Osborne's head by mere inches, and she knew with absolute certainty that her decision to flee Boston had been both the best and worst choice of her life. Glass shattered across her lap as the horses screamed, and the driver shouted commands that were lost in the thundering chaos of hooves and wheels careening across the rough Colorado Territory road. Olivia pressed herself against the far side of the coach, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The other passengers, a family of 3 heading west for mining opportunities, huddled together in terror as more shots rang out across the autumn afternoon. Then, as suddenly as the attack had begun, it ended. The bandits' horses faded into the distance, apparently satisfied with whatever they had stolen from the strongbox. The stagecoach limped forward, one wheel damaged, making the rest of the journey to Fairplay an agonizing crawl that took hours longer than scheduled. By the time they reached the small mining town nestled in the South Park Valley, darkness had fallen completely, and with it came a cold that seemed to penetrate straight through Olivia's traveling dress and coat. She stepped down from the coach on shaking legs, her carpetbag clutched in numb fingers, and looked around at the unfamiliar streets lined with wooden buildings and the glow of oil lamps in windows. The stage station manager, a gruff man with tobacco-stained whiskers, informed her that the boarding house she had arranged lodging at had burned down 2 weeks prior. He delivered this news with all the emotion of someone commenting on the weather, then turned his attention to assessing the damage to his coach. Olivia stood in the street, watching her breath form clouds in the frigid mountain air, and felt the weight of every decision that had brought her to this moment. The teaching position she had accepted through correspondence would not begin until Monday, 3 days away. She had exactly $14 to her name, having spent most of her savings on the journey west. Her aunt's house in Boston, where she had lived for the past year after her parents' deaths, was now occupied by her aunt's new husband, a man whose wandering hands and leering smiles had made staying impossible. A woman in a dark dress and practical wool shawl approached her, concern evident in her weathered face. "You are looking lost, dear. Are you newly arrived?" "Yes, madam," Olivia managed through chattering teeth. "I was meant to stay at Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, but I have just learned it no longer exists." The woman clicked her tongue sympathetically. "That is an unfortunate situation. There is the hotel, but it is not a suitable place for a young woman alone. Too many miners and drifters." She paused, studying Olivia with sharp but kind eyes. "What brings you to Fairplay?" "I am to be the new schoolteacher." "Ah, we have been expecting you, though not for a few more days. I am Mrs. Patterson. My husband runs the general store." She glanced up at the darkening sky, where stars were beginning to emerge in brilliant profusion. "You cannot stand out here in this cold. Let me think who might have space to take you in." As Mrs. Patterson mentally catalogued the town's residents, a rider approached from the South Road. Even in the dim light, Olivia could see he sat his horse with the easy confidence of a man who had spent his entire life in the saddle. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a sheepskin coat and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. When he dismounted outside the general store, his movements were fluid and economical. "Mr. Kincaid," Mrs. Patterson called out, and the man turned toward them. As he approached, the light from the stage station revealed a face that made Olivia's breath catch for reasons that had nothing to do with the cold. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with strong features, a jaw darkened by several days' growth of beard, and eyes that were a startling blue even in the lamplight. There was something about him that spoke of reliability, of steadiness, that made her think of mountains themselves. "Evening, Mrs. Patterson," he said, his voice a low rumble that somehow made Olivia feel warmer despite the temperature. His gaze moved to Olivia, and she saw a flicker of curiosity in those blue eyes. "Mr. Kincaid, this is Miss Osborne, our new schoolteacher. She has just arrived to find herself with nowhere to stay, Mrs. Henderson's place being gone, and the hotel being what it is." Mrs. Patterson wrung her hands. "I would take her in myself, but we have my sister and her 4 children staying with us since her husband passed, and there is simply no room." Russell Kincaid removed his hat, revealing dark hair that needed cutting. "That is a difficult situation, Miss Osborne." He was quiet for a moment, and Olivia could see him working through the problem. "My ranch is about 5 miles south of town. It is not proper, perhaps, for you to stay there, but I have a housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, who lives in a cabin on the property with her son. You would be welcome to stay in the main house. There are several spare bedrooms, and Mrs. Chen could chaperone. It would only be until you find more suitable arrangements." Olivia knew she should refuse. A proper young woman did not accept such an invitation from a strange man, even with a chapekeeper present. But the cold was seeping into her bones, and the alternative was the questionable hotel or sleeping in the stage station. She made her decision based on practicality and the fact that Mrs. Patterson seemed to trust this man. "That is very kind of you, Mr. Kincaid. I would be grateful to accept, temporarily." He nodded, settling his hat back on his head. "I need to collect a few supplies, then we can head out. It is too cold for you to be standing here. Wait inside the store where it is warm." Mrs. Patterson ushered Olivia into the general store, which smelled of coffee, leather, and dried herbs. The interior was cluttered but organized, with everything from bolts of fabric to mining equipment. A pot-bellied stove radiated blessed heat, and Olivia moved toward it gratefully. "You need not worry about Mr. Kincaid," Mrs. Patterson said as she lit another lamp. "He has owned that ranch for 4 years now, built it up from nothing. He is a hard worker and an honest man. Lost his parents to cholera when he was young, raised by his grandmother until she passed. He keeps to himself mostly, but he is fair and decent. The offer of his home is not made lightly." Olivia nodded, absorbing this information. She watched through the window as Russell Kincaid loaded supplies into saddlebags with efficient movements. He was clearly a man used to doing things himself, used to solving problems and moving forward. There was something deeply appealing about that kind of self-sufficiency. When he finished, he brought his horse to the hitching post and came inside. "Miss Osborne, I apologize, but you will have to ride with me. I did not bring a wagon, and it is too far to walk in this cold." Heat that had nothing to do with the stove flooded Olivia's cheeks. "I have never ridden a horse." "Then you will ride in front of me, and I will make sure you do not fall. Thunder is steady. He will not spook." Russell's tone was matter-of-fact, as if transporting women who had never ridden was something he did regularly. With Mrs. Patterson's help, Olivia arranged her skirts as modestly as possible. Russell mounted first, then reached down for her. His hand, when she took it, was strong and calloused, the hand of a man who worked for his living. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, settling her side saddle in front of him. His arm came around her waist to hold the reins, and Olivia found herself surrounded by his warmth, the smell of leather and sage and something uniquely him. "Hold on to the saddle horn," he instructed. "I will not let you fall." They set off into the night, and Olivia tried to ignore how aware she was of every point where their bodies touched. She had been courted twice in Boston, proper courtships with afternoon teas and supervised walks. Neither had made her pulse race the way it was racing now. The ride took perhaps 40 minutes, following a road that was more suggestion than reality. Russell guided the horse with easy competence, and true to his word, his arm kept her secure. He did not attempt conversation, seeming content with silence, but it was not an uncomfortable quiet. Above them, the stars blazed in stunning clarity, more stars than Olivia had ever seen in her life. The air was so cold it burned her lungs, but pressed against Russell's chest, with his coat creating a windbreak, she found she was not as cold as she had been in town. Finally, structures emerged from the darkness. A barn, several outbuildings, and a house that was larger than she had expected. Lamplight glowed in one window, giving the scene a welcoming quality that made something in Olivia's chest ease slightly. Russell dismounted and lifted her down, his hands at her waist. For just a moment, they stood close enough that she could see the frost on his breath, could see the way his eyes searched her face as if trying to understand what had brought her here. "Welcome to the Double K Ranch," he said quietly. The front door opened, and a woman emerged wrapped in a heavy shawl. She was Chinese, perhaps in her late 40s, with sharp, intelligent eyes and an air of capable authority. "Mr. Russell, you brought a guest. Miss Osborne, this is Mrs. Chen, my housekeeper and the person who actually keeps this ranch running. Mrs. Chen, this is the new school teacher. She needs a place to stay for a few days." Mrs. Chen took in the situation with one sweeping glance, then nodded. Come in, come in. Too cold to stand talking." "You look frozen, Miss Osborne. I will make tea." The interior of the ranch house was not what Olivia had expected. It was clean and well furnished, with evidence of a woman's touch in the curtains at the windows and the rugs on the floors. The main room featured a large stone fireplace where a fire burned, a sturdy table with chairs, and comfortable-looking furniture. Books lined one wall, which surprised her. Mrs. Chen bustled about, hanging Olivia's coat and directing her to a chair near the fire. Russell excused himself to tend to his horse, and within minutes, Olivia found herself wrapped in a quilt with a cup of hot tea in her hands while Mrs. Chen heated soup on the stove. "Mr. Russell, he does not often bring people here," Mrs. Chen said as she worked. "He is a private man. But he has a good heart. When my husband died 3 years ago and the mining company said we must leave their housing, Mr. Russell gave us the cabin and paid me to keep house. My son Samuel works with the cattle. We have a good life here." Olivia sipped the tea, feeling warmth finally beginning to penetrate the deep chill in her bones. "It is very kind of you both to take in a stranger. We all need help sometimes." Mrs. Chen set a bowl of soup and fresh bread on the table. "Eat. You are too thin." "Did you have trouble on your journey?" As Olivia ate, she found herself telling this kind woman about the stagecoach attack, though she kept her voice steady and did not mention how frightened she had been. Mrs. Chen listened with understanding nods, not interrupting, just letting Olivia talk. Russell returned as she was finishing, having removed his coat and hat. His hair was slightly mussed from the hat, and Olivia thought he looked younger without the shadows obscuring his face. He helped himself to soup, sitting at the table with the ease of a man in his own home. "The stage was attacked," he asked, his voice tight with concern. "Just outside of town. They shot at the coach but seemed more interested in the strongbox. No one was hurt." Olivia set down her spoon, suddenly feeling the exhaustion of the day settling over her like a weight. Russell's jaw tightened. "That is the 3rd attack in 2 months. The sheriff is trying to track them, but they seem to know the territory too well." He paused. "You should not have had to experience that on your first day in Colorado." "I have experienced worse," Olivia said before she could stop herself. His eyes met hers and she saw understanding there, a recognition that they had both known hardship. He did not press for details, for which she was grateful. Mrs. Chen showed Olivia to a bedroom upstairs after she finished eating. It was a simple room but clean, with a real bed covered in quilts, a washstand, and a window that she imagined would have a lovely view in daylight. Someone, probably Mrs. Chen, had already placed a pitcher of water and towels for her use. "If you need anything in the night, my cabin is just behind the house," Mrs. Chen said. "But you are safe here. Mr. Russell, he would never let harm come to someone under his protection." After Mrs. Chen left, Olivia changed into her nightgown and unpinned her hair. It fell past her shoulders in waves, dark brown and thick. She brushed it mechanically, her mind replaying the events of the day. This morning she had been in a stagecoach, still technically in Kansas. Now she was in Colorado, in the home of a rancher she had met only hours ago, preparing for a life completely different from anything she had known. She was 22 years old, alone in the world except for distant cousins she barely knew, and she had just accepted shelter from a stranger because she had no other choice. It should have terrified her. Instead, as she climbed into the bed and pulled the quilts up to her chin, she felt something that might have been hope. Downstairs, she could hear the low murmur of Russell and Mrs. Chen talking, though she could not make out words. The house settled around her with comfortable creaks and sighs. Outside, wind whispered across the high valley, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Olivia fell asleep thinking of blue eyes and strong hands, and the way Russell Kincaid had said he would not let her fall. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, disoriented, she could not remember where she was. Then memory returned, and she sat up, pushing her hair back from her face. Through the window, she could see the ranch spread out in morning light, and it took her breath away. The house sat in a valley surrounded by mountains that still held snow on their peaks despite it being September. Grassland stretched in every direction, dotted with cattle. Aspen trees, their leaves turning gold, clustered along a creek that sparkled in the sunlight. The sky was a blue so intense it seemed unreal, and the air, even through the closed window, looked diamond clear. Olivia dressed quickly in one of her two remaining respectable dresses, a brown wool that was practical if not fashionable. She pinned her hair into a simple bun and went downstairs, following the smell of food and the sound of voices. Russell sat at the table with a young Chinese man who had to be Mrs. Chen's son. They were discussing something about the cattle and north pasture, their conversation falling silent when Olivia appeared. Both men stood and Russell made introductions. "Miss Osborne, this is Samuel Chen." Samuel, Miss Osborne, will be teaching at the school. Samuel was perhaps 19, with his mother's intelligent eyes and a shy smile. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Osborne." "Please sit and eat," Mrs. Chen said, already filling a plate. "The men have work to do and you need a proper breakfast." The meal was delicious, and more food than Olivia normally ate in a morning. Eggs, bacon, biscuits with butter and jam, and coffee that was strong and hot. She ate while Russell and Samuel discussed their plans for the day, something about moving cattle to winter pasture and checking fence lines. "Miss Osborne," Russell said as he prepared to leave, "I need to ride to town this afternoon to file some papers with the land office. I can take you then if you want to meet with the school board and see the schoolhouse." "That would be very helpful, thank you." He nodded, settled his hat on his head, and left with Samuel. Through the window, Olivia watched them walk to the barn, their strides similar in their purposefulness. Russell moved with a confidence that spoke of a man completely at home in his environment, master of his domain in a way that was not arrogant but simply factual. "He is a good man," Mrs. Chen said, noticing Olivia's gaze. "Lonely, I think, but good. How did he come to own this ranch?" Olivia asked, helping to clear the table despite Mrs. Chen's protests. He worked as a cowboy, saved his money, and bought the land when he was only 22. Spent 2 years building the house and barn himself, with some help from Samuel and my husband. Bought his first cattle with money he had saved since he was a boy. Now he has over 200 head and the ranch does well. He wants to build it into something that will last, something to pass down. Mrs. Chen paused, scrubbing a plate. But to pass something down, you need family. He has been alone too long. The words hung in the air, and Olivia felt her cheeks warm. She busied herself with drying dishes, not trusting herself to respond. The morning passed pleasantly. Mrs. Chen showed her around the property, pointing out the garden that still had some late vegetables, the chickens in their coop, the barn where half a dozen horses watched them with curious eyes. Everything was well maintained, organized, clearly the work of someone who took pride in what they had built. They were walking back to the house when 3 riders appeared on the road from town. Mrs. Chen tensed, and Olivia felt a flutter of alarm at the older woman's reaction. "Who are they?" she asked. "The Sutton brothers. They have a ranch to the west. They are not good men." Mrs. Chen's voice was tight. "Come, we should go inside." But the riders had already spotted them and changed direction, cantering toward the house. They were rough-looking men, all 3 of them, with mean eyes and smirks that made Olivia's skin crawl. The leader, a burly man with a scarred face, tipped his hat in a mockery of politeness. "Morning, ladies. Looking for Kincaid. Mr. Russell is working the north pasture, Mrs. Chen said, her voice firm despite being outnumbered. "You can leave a message. We will wait." The man dismounted without invitation and his brothers followed suit. "Who is this pretty thing? Have not seen her before." Olivia drew herself up to her full height, which was not particularly impressive, and met his gaze with all the steel she had learned growing up in Boston. "I am Miss Osborne, the new schoolteacher, and you are trespassing on private property." The man laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Spirited, I like that. You will find things work differently out here than wherever you came from, teacher. Out here, might makes right. Out here, a man respects another man's property or he answers for it." The new voice came from behind the Suttons, and they spun to find Russell sitting on his horse about 20 yards away. He had approached so quietly that none of them had heard him. Samuel was with him, and both men had rifles across their saddles, not pointed at anyone but visible and ready. Russell dismounted with deliberate slowness, his eyes never leaving the eldest Sutton. "You have business with me, Tom. You can state it and ride on. You have no business with the ladies." Tom Sutton's hand drifted toward the gun at his hip, and Olivia felt her heart stop. But Russell did not flinch, did not move, just stood there with an absolute stillness that was more intimidating than any threat could have been. "Just being neighborly," Tom finally said, his voice surly. "Heard you might be interested in selling. We could use more Gray's land." "The Double K is not for sale. Not now, not ever. I have told you that a dozen times, Tom. I do not expect to have to tell you again." The tension stretched taut as a wire. Then Tom laughed, breaking it. "Come on, brothers, Kincaid is not interested in being neighborly." He mounted his horse and looked down at Russell. "You will change your mind one day. Everyone has a price. Not for my land. And Tom, you come onto my property uninvited again, you will not ride off. That is not a threat. That is a fact." The Suttons rode away, and Olivia released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Russell watched them until they were out of sight, then turned to her and Mrs. Chen. "Are you both all right?" "We are fine," Mrs. Chen assured him. "They did not do anything, just talked big." Russell's jaw was tight with anger, though his voice remained calm. "They should not have approached you at all. Samuel, stay close to the house the rest of the day. I do not trust them." "Yes, sir." Olivia found her voice. "Do they often harass you?" The Suttons think because they have been here longer, they have rights to land that does not belong to them. They have tried to intimidate me into selling since I bought this place. So far it has just been words and a few cut fences, but Tom is getting more desperate. His ranch is failing because he is a poor manager who treats his men badly and his animals worse. Russell pulled his hat off and ran a hand through his hair in frustration. I apologize that you had to deal with that. You have nothing to apologize for. They were the ones who behaved inappropriately. His eyes met hers and something passed between them, a current of understanding and mutual respect. Still, you are under my protection while you are here. I take that seriously. The words sent a shiver through Olivia that had nothing to do with cold or fear. There was something primal about the way he said it, something that made her feel protected in a way she had not felt since her father died. After a quiet lunch, Russell hitched a team to a wagon and helped Olivia onto the bench seat. The day had warmed, and the ride to Fairplay was beautiful, following the creek through golden aspen groves. Russell handled the team with easy competence, and Olivia found herself watching his hands, strong and sure on the reins. "Tell me about Fairplay," she said, breaking a comfortable silence. "It is a mining town, about 600 people, maybe more now with the new claims being filed. Grew up almost overnight after they found gold in the area back in '59. It is rough but not lawless. We have a sheriff, a doctor, several churches. The school was built 2 years ago, funded by the more established families who wanted education for their children. You will have about 30 students, ages 6 to 16, various levels of learning. What happened to the previous teacher? She married a miner and moved to his claim up in the mountains. That was in June. The school board has been looking for a replacement since then." He glanced at her. "You seem young to be a teacher." "I am 22. I have been teaching for 3 years, first as an assistant in a girls' school in Boston, then as a primary teacher. I have references." She heard the defensive note in her voice and softened it. "I am qualified, Mr. Kincaid." "I did not mean to suggest otherwise. I am 27, and I remember when people said I was too young to run a ranch. Age and ability are not always connected." They rode in silence for a bit. Then Olivia asked, "What made you choose ranching?" Russell was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. Finally, he said, "My father was a farmer in Kansas. I was 12 when cholera took my parents. My grandmother brought me to Colorado to a small place she had. I worked for neighboring ranches, learning cattle and horses. I watched men build something from nothing, watched them create legacies. I wanted that. Not just to survive, but to build something that mattered, something that would outlast me. When my grandmother died and left me what little she had, I used it to start the Double K. It is not much compared to some of the big ranches, but it is mine. Every acre earned with my own sweat and blood." The passion in his voice moved her. This was a man who understood what it meant to have nothing and work for everything. "I understand that," she said softly. "The need to build something that is yours." He looked at her with those striking blue eyes. "Is that why you came west? To build something? To escape something and build something? Sometimes they are the same thing." He nodded, not pressing for details, and Olivia felt gratitude for his restraint. She was not ready to talk about her aunt's husband, about the way he had cornered her in hallways, about the choice between staying and compromising her safety or leaving and facing the unknown. Coming west had been an act of desperation and courage in equal measure. Fairplay came into view, looking more substantial in daylight than it had the night before. The main street was lined with businesses. A bank, hotel, several saloons, a church with a white steeple, the general store, a land office, and various other establishments. People moved along the wooden sidewalks, and the sound of a hammer on anvil rang from a blacksmith shop. Russell drove to a neat building near the church. A sign proclaimed it Fair Play School District. He helped Olivia down and said, "I will be at the land office for about an hour. Will that give you enough time?" "I believe so. Thank you, Mr. Kincaid." "Russell," he said, "if you are staying at my ranch, we need not be so formal. Then you must call me Olivia." He smiled, a real smile that transformed his serious face, making him devastatingly handsome. "Olivia it is." She watched him drive away, then turned to face the school board, squaring her shoulders and lifting her chin. This, at least, was familiar territory. The meeting went well. The school board consisted of 5 people: a banker, the minister, a mine owner, a businessman who ran the hotel and mercantile, and Mrs. Patterson. They reviewed her credentials, which she had brought in her carpet bag, and asked about her teaching philosophy and methods. Olivia answered confidently, drawing on her years of experience and genuine love of teaching. "You understand," the mine owner said, "that this is not a fancy Boston school. You will have children from all backgrounds, miners' sons alongside merchants' daughters. Some will know their letters, others will be starting fresh. I understand. Education should be available to all children regardless of background. Every child deserves the chance to learn and grow." She met each board member's eyes in turn. "I am not here looking for an easy position. I am here to teach, to help these children build better futures. That is what matters to me." Mrs. Patterson smiled approvingly. The board conferred briefly, then the minister spoke. "Miss Osborne, we would be pleased to offer you the position. The salary is $40 per month, paid on the first of each month. School runs Monday through Friday, 8 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. We expect you to maintain discipline, teach reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and geography to the best of your ability. The position includes use of the teacher's cottage, which is adjacent to the schoolhouse." Relief flooded through Olivia. "I accept, gratefully." They shook hands all around, and Mrs. Patterson offered to show her the schoolhouse and cottage. Both were simple but adequate. The schoolhouse was one large room with a wood stove, rows of desks in various stages of repair, a large slate board at the front, and shelves that held a modest collection of books and supplies. The cottage was truly tiny, just 2 rooms and a root cellar, but it was clean and had its own stove and a bed. "It is not much," Mrs. Patterson said apologetically. "It is perfect," Olivia said honestly. "When can I move in?" "It is ready now if you wish. Though I understand you are staying with Mr. Kincaid. That has caused some talk in town, I will not lie to you." Olivia felt her cheeks heat. "It was not planned. When I arrived and had nowhere else to go, he kindly offered his guest room. His housekeeper chaperoned." "I know, dear, and I have been telling people exactly that. Still, it might be wise to move to the cottage soon for propriety's sake. People will talk regardless, but we should not give them more fuel for gossip. I will move in tomorrow if Russell can bring my things." They discussed details about when school would start, which would be the following Monday, giving Olivia several days to prepare. By the time Olivia left the school, her mind was already planning lessons and organizing supplies she would need. Russell was waiting with the wagon outside the general store, and his face brightened when he saw her. "How did it go?" "I have the position, and a cottage to live in, which I will move into tomorrow if you are willing to bring me in my trunk from the stage office." Something flickered across his face, too quick to interpret. "Of course, I am happy for you, Olivia. This is what you came here for." "It is." She climbed onto the wagon seat. "Thank you for giving me shelter when I needed it. I will not forget your kindness. It was not a hardship." He guided the team out of town and they rode for a while in silence. Then he said, "You would be welcome to stay longer at the ranch if you wanted. For propriety, you could take your meals with Mrs. Chen in her cabin, but the offer stands." Olivia's heart beat faster. She wanted to stay. In just one day, the Double K had felt more like home than her aunt's house ever had. But Mrs. Patterson's words about gossip echoed in her mind. "That is kind, but I think it is best if I establish myself in my own place. I need to build credibility in the community, and staying with you, no matter how innocent, might undermine that." He nodded, his jaw tight. "You are probably right." They rode back to the ranch as the sun began its descent toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Russell pointed out landmarks, told her about the land, and Olivia listened, memorizing everything. She found herself already dreading leaving, even though she knew it was necessary. That evening, Mrs. Chen prepared a farewell dinner of sorts, though Olivia would not leave until morning. They ate together, the four of them, Russell and Samuel and Mrs. Chen and Olivia, and it felt like family in a way that made Olivia's chest ache. This was what she had lost when her parents died, this sense of belonging. After dinner, Russell asked if she would like to see the sunset from the rise behind the house. Olivia accepted, and they walked through the cooling evening air to a small hill that overlooked the valley. From there, the view was breathtaking. Mountains in every direction, the creek winding silver through the grassland, the ranch buildings looking solid and permanent in the gathering dusk. "It is beautiful," Olivia said softly. "It is why I chose this spot for the house. I wanted to see this every day, wanted to remember why I work so hard." Russell stood close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Olivia, I know we have known each other only a day, but I want you to know that you are welcome here anytime. For dinner, to visit, whatever you need. You are not alone in fair play." She turned to face him, and her breath caught at the intensity in his eyes. "Why are you being so kind to me?" "Because from the moment I saw you standing in the cold, looking lost and brave at the same time, I wanted to help. Because you have a strength about you that I recognize. Because in one day you have made this house feel less empty." He paused, seeming to struggle with words. "Because I would like to know you better if you would allow it." Olivia's pulse thundered in her ears. "I would like that too." He smiled, that transformative smile, and offered her his arm. They walked back to the house as stars began to appear, and Olivia thought that perhaps coming to Colorado had been less about running away and more about running towards something she had not even known she was looking for. That night, lying in the guest room for the last time, Olivia replayed every conversation, every look, every moment of the past day and a half. Russell Kincaid had entered her life in a moment of need and somehow, impossibly, had made her feel things she had never expected to feel. It was too soon, too fast, and yet her heart did not seem to care about timing or propriety. She fell asleep with his name on her lips and dreamed of blue eyes and mountain sunsets. Morning came too soon. Olivia packed her few belongings and came downstairs to find Russell already waiting with the wagon. Mrs. Chen pressed a bundle of food into her hands and made her promise to come for Sunday dinner. The ride to town was quiet, both of them seeming reluctant to break the peaceful morning silence. Russell collected her trunk from the stage office, then drove to the little cottage. He carried the trunk inside and set it in the bedroom, then stood in the small main room looking uncomfortable. "It is not much," he said, echoing Mrs. Patterson's words. "It is mine, and that makes it everything." Olivia smiled at him. "Thank you, Russell, for everything. Remember what I said. You are not alone." He hesitated, then took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture that was both chaste and intimate. "May I call on you, properly I mean?" Bring you to church on Sunday, perhaps take you driving. Joy bubbled up in Olivia's chest. I would like that very much. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it, a gesture that should have been old-fashioned but instead felt perfect. Until Sunday, then. She watched from the cottage door as he drove away, and only when he was out of sight did she allow herself to touch her fingers to her lips, remembering the feel of his mouth against her skin. The next few days passed in a flurry of activity. Olivia cleaned the schoolhouse, organized supplies, and prepared lessons for students she had not yet met. Townspeople stopped by to introduce themselves and assess the new teacher. She was polite to everyone, professional, and made sure to establish herself as competent and respectable. But her thoughts kept drifting to Russell, to the way he had looked at her in the sunset, to the warmth in his voice when he said her name. Sunday felt impossibly far away. On Friday afternoon, as she was sweeping the schoolhouse steps, a rider approached. Her heart leaped, thinking it might be Russell, but it was Samuel Chen instead. He dismounted and handed her a wrapped package. "From Russell," he said with a shy smile. "He said you might need these for the school." Inside the package were a dozen new slate pencils, a set of chalk, and a beautiful globe that must have cost a considerable sum. There was also a note in strong, clear handwriting. "For your students and for you. The world is larger than fair play, but I am glad you are here. Russell." Olivia pressed the note to her chest, blinking back tears. Samuel pretended not to notice her emotion, instead asking about the school and telling her about life on the ranch. Before he left, he said, "Russell is a good man, the best I have known. He deserves someone who sees that." "I do see it," Olivia said softly. Samuel nodded, satisfied, and rode away. Sunday dawned clear and beautiful. Olivia dressed in her best dress, a deep green that brought out the color of her eyes, and pinned her hair carefully. When Russell arrived in a freshly washed wagon, wearing a clean shirt and jacket, both of them suddenly shy, she felt like a girl again, going on her first courtship call. "You look beautiful," he said, helping her onto the wagon seat. "You look very handsome yourself." The church was full, and Olivia felt every eye on them as they entered together. Russell kept his hand on the small of her back, a proprietary gesture that made his intentions clear to anyone watching. They sat together, shared a hymnal, and when the service ended, he introduced her to people she had not yet met, his pride evident. After church, instead of driving her straight back to the cottage, Russell took her on a drive through the surrounding countryside. He showed her his favorite places: a meadow where elk gathered at dawn, a overlook with a view that stretched for miles, a grove of aspen where he said the colors were incredible in peak autumn. They talked, really talked, sharing pieces of their lives. Olivia told him about her parents, about teaching in Boston, about the decision to come west. She did not tell him about her aunt's husband, not yet, but she shared enough that he understood she had left difficult circumstances behind. Russell talked about building the ranch, about his dreams of expanding, of breeding better cattle, of making the Double K a name people recognized. He talked about lonely winters and the satisfaction of seeing something grow because of your own work. "You never want more than the ranch?" Olivia asked. "A family, perhaps." His eyes met hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "I want that very much, but I want it with the right person. I will not settle and I will not rush. When I marry, it will be forever." The word "when" hung between them, full of possibility. He brought her back to the cottage as afternoon faded toward evening. At her door, he said, "May I see you again? Perhaps Wednesday evening after school?" "Yes," she smiled up at him. "I would like that." He hesitated, and she could see him warring with himself. Then, slowly, giving her time to pull away, he cupped her face in his hand and kissed her forehead, a gesture of tenderness that made her eyes sting with tears. Until Wednesday, Olivia. School started Monday morning, and Olivia threw herself into teaching with all the passion and energy she possessed. Her students ranged from 6-year-old twin girls who looked at her with worshipful eyes to a sullen 15-year-old boy who clearly did not want to be there. She learned their names, assessed their abilities, and began the work of educating them. It was challenging and exhausting and wonderful. Some of the students were bright and eager, soaking up knowledge like dry earth soaking up rain. Others struggled with basics, and Olivia stayed late to help them, determined that every child would learn. Wednesday evening, Russell arrived at the cottage with a basket. "I thought we could have a picnic if you are not too tired." She was exhausted, but the sight of him banished her fatigue. They walked to the creek that ran behind the school and spread a blanket on the grass. Mrs. Chen had packed the basket with fried chicken, biscuits, cheese, and apple pie, and they ate while the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant colors. "Tell me about your students," Russell said, and Olivia did, describing each child with affection and occasional frustration. He listened intently, asking questions, seeming genuinely interested in her work. "You love teaching," he observed. "I do. There is something sacred about helping a child learn to read, watching their world expand as they discover what words can do. Each student is a possibility, a future not yet written." She paused. "Does that sound foolish?" "Not at all. It is how I feel about the land, about raising cattle. We are both trying to nurture something into becoming more than it is." They talked until the stars came out, and when Russell walked her back to the cottage, he held her hand, his fingers intertwined with hers. At her door, he kissed her forehead again, and Olivia found herself wishing he would kiss her properly, on the mouth, but not rushing him. This slow courtship felt right, felt solid in a way that her previous courtships had not. The weeks passed in a rhythm that felt almost magical. Russell came to town twice a week, always with some excuse, something to bring her or show her. They went for drives, for walks, shared meals at the hotel's restaurant. He brought her to the ranch for Sunday dinners with Mrs. Chen and Samuel, and those afternoons felt like coming home. They talked about everything: books they loved, dreams they harbored, fears they fought. Olivia learned that Russell had taught himself to read at age 10, devouring every book he could find. He learned that she wanted to write someday, perhaps children's books about the West. He met her students when he came to town, speaking to them with the same respect he showed adults. The children adored him, especially when he brought a gentle mare and let them pet her, telling them about horses and how to approach them safely. Olivia watched him with those children and felt something shift in her chest. This man, this strong, quiet rancher, would be a wonderful father someday. The thought should have frightened her, but instead it felt like certainty settling into her bones. One evening in late October, with frost starting to appear on the grass in the mornings, Russell asked her to come to the ranch for supper. When he picked her up, there was a nervousness about him that was unusual, a tension in the way he held the reins. At the ranch, Mrs. Chen served them dinner, then discreetly disappeared to her cabin with Samuel. Russell led Olivia to the main room where a fire crackled in the fireplace. He poured them each a small glass of brandy, and they sat together on the sofa, close enough that their legs touched. "Olivia," he began, then stopped, seeming to gather courage. "We have known each other for 6 weeks now." "Yes." Her heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. "In that time, you have become the most important part of my day. I find myself thinking about you constantly, planning things I want to show you, wanting to share every moment with you." He set down his glass and took her hands in his. "I know it has not been long, but I also know my own mind. I am 27 years old." I have worked hard, built something I am proud of, and now I want to share it with someone, not just someone. You." Olivia could barely breathe. "Russell, let me finish, please, before I lose my nerve." He smiled, though his hands were trembling slightly. "You are strong, Olivia. You are brave and kind and passionate about things that matter. You make me laugh, you make me think, you make me want to be better. When I imagine my future now, I cannot imagine it without you in it." He slid off the sofa onto one knee, still holding her hands, and Olivia felt tears spill down her cheeks. "Olivia Osborne, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I promise I will work every day to make you happy, to build a life with you that is full of love and laughter and partnership. I do not have much to offer except a ranch, a good name, and a heart that is completely yours." "Yes," Olivia whispered, then louder. "Yes, Russell, yes." He pulled her into his arms, and finally, he kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, then deepened as she responded, her hands coming up to tangle in his hair. The kiss was everything a first kiss should be, sweet and passionate and full of promise. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Russell laughed, a sound of pure joy. "You have made me the happiest man alive." "When did you know?" Olivia asked, touching his face, tracing the line of his jaw. "When did you know you wanted to marry me?" "The first night, when you stood in the cold looking brave despite being terrified, when you made a practical decision even though it might not have been proper. I saw your strength then, your refusal to be defeated by circumstances. I did not know it was love yet, but I knew you were extraordinary." He kissed her again, softly. "What about you? I think I started falling in love when you promised you would not let me fall from the horse. You meant it literally, but something in me heard a deeper promise. And then every day after, you showed me who you were, and I fell deeper." She smiled through her tears. "I love you, Russell Kincaid. I love you, Olivia Osborne, soon to be Olivia Kincaid." They talked late into the night, making plans. They would marry in December after the school term's first session ended. Olivia would continue teaching, at least for now, though they both wanted children eventually. Russell wanted to expand the ranch, and Olivia had ideas about starting a library in Fairplay. They dreamed aloud, building a future together with words and kisses and shared laughter. When Russell drove her back to town, very late, the stars were brilliant overhead. At her cottage door, he kissed her goodnight, a kiss that lasted long enough to make them both dizzy, then forced himself to step back. "I should let you sleep. You have school tomorrow." "I am too happy to sleep." "Me too," he grinned. "But I will try, and I will dream of you, my beautiful fiancé." Olivia floated through the next day on a cloud of joy. Her students noticed, commenting that Miss Osborne looked extra happy, and she admitted that she was engaged to be married. The children cheered, and the news spread through town like wildfire. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Most people had already guessed that Russell and Olivia were courting, and they approved of the match. Mrs. Patterson organized a small engagement party at her home, and Olivia was touched by the warmth of the community's welcome. Not everyone was pleased, however. Tom Sutton made a point of cornering Russell in town one afternoon, with Olivia close enough to hear. "Heard you are getting married, Kincaid. Guess you are putting down roots, thinking you are going to stay." "I am staying," Russell said flatly. "That has never been in question. We will see. Accidents happen. Ranches fail. Would be a shame if your pretty teacher ended up a widow." Tom's smile was cruel. "Maybe you should reconsider our offer to buy you out. For her sake." Russell's fist connected with Tom's jaw so fast Olivia barely saw him move. Tom went down hard and his brother started forward, but Russell had his gun out, not pointed at anyone but held ready. "You threaten me, Tom, and I will deal with it. You threaten my future wife and I will end you. That is not bravado. That is a promise." His voice was cold, deadly serious. "Stay away from my ranch, stay away from Olivia, or I swear to God I will make you regret it." The sheriff appeared, drawn by the commotion, and heard enough to warn the Suttons to move along. After they left, the sheriff spoke quietly to Russell. "They are getting desperate. Their ranch is failing and they think they can force you out, take your land for cheap. Watch yourself, Russell." "I will." Russell holstered his gun and turned to Olivia, his face softening. "I am sorry you had to see that. I am not. I am glad you defended us." She took his arm. "But we need to be careful. Tom Sutton is dangerous. I know. I will not let him hurt you, I swear it." November brought the first real snow, a few inches that transformed Fairplay into a winter wonderland. Olivia's students got distracted staring out the windows at the white world, and she finally gave up on formal lessons for the day and let them go outside for a snowball fight. Russell came to town that afternoon and joined the fun, laughing as children pelted him with snowballs, then helping the smaller ones build a snow fort. Watching him, Olivia felt such a surge of love that it almost hurt. This good, strong man was going to be her husband, the father of her children, her partner in all things. That evening they sat in her cottage with hot cocoa, planning their wedding. It would be simple in the church, with Mrs. Chen and Samuel standing up with them. Olivia would wear her mother's wedding dress, which she had brought west not knowing if she would ever use it. They would have a small reception at the hotel, then spend a few days at the ranch before Olivia returned to teaching. "I wish we had more time for a real honeymoon," Russell said, "but winter is not a good time to travel. We have our whole lives for traveling. Right now, I just want to start our life together." He kissed her, deep and thorough, and Olivia felt heat pool low in her belly. They had been careful to maintain propriety, but it was getting harder. She wanted him, wanted to be his wife in every way, and December felt very far away. As if reading her thoughts, Russell pulled back, breathing hard. "We should marry sooner." "What?" "Olivia, I do not want to wait until December. I want you as my wife now. We could marry next week, just a simple ceremony. We have already planned it all anyway." "But school." "School will continue. You will still teach. But you will come home to me at the end of each day and we will build our life together." His eyes searched hers. "Unless you want to wait." "No," she said quickly. "No, I do not want to wait either. Let us marry next week." They set the date for the following Saturday, exactly 8 weeks after the night Olivia had arrived in Fairplay needing warmth. The symmetry felt right. The week passed in a blur of preparation. Mrs. Chen helped Olivia alter her mother's dress, a simple but beautiful gown of ivory silk. Mrs. Patterson and several other women organized the reception. Russell arranged everything at the ranch, preparing the house for Olivia's arrival as his wife. On Thursday evening, Russell came to the cottage looking worried. "I need to tell you something." Olivia's heart clenched. "What is wrong?" "Samuel was in town today and overheard some of the Sutton Ranch hands talking. Tom Sutton is planning something to do with the wedding. Samuel could not hear details, but he is convinced they mean to disrupt it or worse. Should we postpone?" "No." Russell's jaw set stubbornly. "I will not let Tom Sutton dictate our lives. I have spoken to the sheriff. He will have deputies at the church and watching the ranch. We will proceed as planned, and if Tom tries anything, he will find himself in jail or worse." Olivia knew she should be frightened, but instead she felt only determination. "Then we will marry on Saturday as planned. I will not let fear win." Russell pulled her close. "You are the bravest woman I have ever known." Friday, Olivia dismissed school early and spent the afternoon with Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Chen, preparing for the next day. They laughed and told stories, and Olivia felt surrounded by friendship and love. This was her community now, these people who had welcomed her. That evening, alone in the cottage for the last time, Olivia allowed herself a moment of nervousness. Tomorrow she would become Russell's wife. Tomorrow her life would change completely. She had been alone for so long, independent out of necessity. Could she truly share her life with someone? But then she thought of Russell's smile, his strength, the way he listened when she talked, the respect he showed her dreams. This was not giving up independence. This was choosing partnership with someone who saw her as an equal. She fell asleep thinking of blue eyes and strong hands and the life they would build together. Saturday dawned clear and cold, with new snow glistening on the ground. Mrs. Patterson arrived early to help Olivia dress, pinning her hair into an elegant style and helping her into the ivory dress. When Olivia looked in the mirror, she saw her mother looking back at her and tears pricked her eyes. "She would be so proud of you," Mrs. Patterson said softly. "You have been so brave, coming west alone, building a new life." "I wish she could be here," Olivia whispered. "She is, dear, she is." The church was full when they arrived. It seemed the entire town had turned out for the wedding. Olivia saw Russell at the front, standing with Samuel, and her heart swelled. He wore a new suit and looked impossibly handsome, and the expression on his face when he saw her walking down the aisle made her throat tight with emotion. The ceremony was simple and beautiful. They exchanged vows written by the minister, promising to love and honor each other all the days of their lives. Russell's voice was strong and sure, and Olivia's was clear despite happy tears. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Russell kissed her with a tenderness that made the congregation sigh. They walked down the aisle together, married, and Olivia felt as if she were floating. This was real. She was Mrs. Russell Kincaid now, partner to this good man, beginning a new chapter of her life. The reception at the hotel was joyous. There was food and music, and Russell danced with Olivia, holding her close, whispering words of love in her ear that made her blush and laugh. Friends and neighbors offered congratulations and gifts. Everything was perfect. Then Tom Sutton walked in. The room fell silent as he approached Russell and Olivia, his brothers flanking him. He was clearly drunk, swaying slightly, his eyes mean. "Came to offer my congratulations," he slurred. "Kincaid finally got himself a wife. Hope she knows what she is getting into, marrying a man who will not be around long." Russell moved to stand between Sutton and Olivia, his body tense. "Get out, Tom. You are not welcome here. This is a public place. I have as much right to be here as anyone." Tom focused on Olivia. "You could have done better, Mrs. Kincaid. When Russell loses that ranch, and he will, you will wish you had chosen different. That is enough." The sheriff appeared, flanked by 2 deputies. "Tom, you and your brothers are leaving now. You are drunk and causing a disturbance. I am not done." "Yes, you are." The sheriff's hand rested on his gun. "Leave peacefully or leave in chains. Your choice." The Suttons left, but Tom's parting look promised that this was not over. The party resumed, but the joy had been dimmed. Russell was tense, his eyes constantly moving to the doors and windows, watching for trouble. Finally, as evening fell, they said their goodbyes and Russell helped Olivia into the wagon for the ride to the ranch. Samuel and Mrs. Chen had gone ahead to give them privacy, and as they left fair play behind, some of Russell's tension eased. "I am sorry about Tom," he said. "I wanted this day to be perfect for you." "It was perfect," Olivia assured him. "Nothing Tom Sutton says or does can diminish what today means. I married the man I love. I am happy." He smiled and pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "I love you, Mrs. Kincaid. I love you too, husband." The ranch house glowed with lamplight as they approached. Mrs. Chen had left supper warming on the stove and a fire burning in the bedroom fireplace, then tactfully retired to her cabin. The house was theirs, and Olivia felt her nervousness return as Russell carried her over the threshold. He set her down gently, then cupped her face in his hands. "We do not have to rush anything. We have all the time in the world." But Olivia had waited long enough. She went up on her toes and kissed him deeply, passionately, pouring all her love and desire into it. Russell responded immediately, his arms coming around her, pulling her close. They made their way upstairs between kisses, fumbling with buttons and laces, laughing breathlessly. Their wedding night was everything it should be, tender and passionate, awkward and perfect. Russell was gentle, patient, making sure Olivia felt loved and cherished. And when they finally came together as husband and wife, it felt like coming home. Later, lying in his arms with firelight dancing on the walls, Olivia felt happier than she had ever been. This man, this place, this life, they were hers now. She had arrived in Fairplay alone and frightened, and she had found not just shelter but love. "What are you thinking?" Russell asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "That I am happy, that I love you, that I cannot imagine being anywhere else." "Good. Because I plan to keep you forever." He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. "You are mine now, Olivia Kincaid, and I am yours, forever." "Forever," she agreed and kissed him again. They spent Sunday at the ranch, not leaving the house except to tend to necessary chores. They made love, talked, made love again, cooked together, and simply enjoyed being married. It was perfect and private, a cocoon of happiness before they had to return to the reality of their regular lives. Monday morning, Russell drove Olivia to school, kissing her thoroughly before she went inside. Her students noticed immediately that Miss Osborne was now Mrs. Kincaid, and there were excited questions which Olivia answered with patient good humor. That afternoon, when school ended, Russell was waiting to drive her home. The word home made Olivia's heart sing. She had a home now, a real home with a husband who loved her. The first few weeks of married life were blissful. They fell into a rhythm. Russell would drive Olivia to school each morning, work the ranch during the day, and pick her up each afternoon. Evenings were spent together, cooking dinner, talking, making love, planning their future. Then, in early December, trouble came. Russell was out checking the north pasture fence when he discovered that someone had cut the wire in multiple places, allowing his cattle to wander. It took 2 days to round them all up, and several were missing, likely stolen. He reported it to the sheriff, and everyone knew who was responsible, even if there was no proof. A week later, the barn door was found open one morning, and 3 horses were gone. Russell tracked them to the Sutton property, but could not retrieve them without proof of theft. The sheriff visited the Suttons but came back empty-handed. "They are trying to provoke me," Russell said grimly one evening. "They want me to do something stupid so they can claim self-defense or get me arrested." "What can we do?" Olivia asked, frightened for him. "Be careful. Watch. Wait. Eventually Tom will slip up, and when he does, we will have him." Russell pulled her close. "Do not worry, love. I will not let him drive us off our land." But the harassment continued. Fences cut, livestock harassed, small fires set that had to be quickly extinguished. Samuel was shot at one afternoon, though he was not hit. The situation was escalating, and Russell knew it was only a matter of time before someone got seriously hurt. In late December, Olivia realized her monthly courses had not come. She waited a few more days to be sure, then told Russell one evening after supper, "I think I am pregnant." Russell's face went through a series of emotions: shock, joy, wonder, and finally fierce protectiveness. "Are you certain?" "Not completely, but fairly sure. It is early yet." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "A baby. We are going to have a baby." Then he pulled back, his expression serious. "This changes things. I need to end the situation with the Suttons now before our child is born into danger. What are you going to do? I am going to confront Tom directly, force a resolution one way or another. He saw her fear and softened his tone. I will not do anything reckless, I promise, but I cannot let this continue. Our child will not grow up under constant threat. The next day, Russell rode to the Sutton ranch with Samuel and two hands from a neighboring ranch as witnesses. He demanded to speak with Tom, and when the older man came out, Russell laid out an ultimatum. This ends now, Tom. You have stolen from me, vandalized my property, and threatened my family. I have witnesses to some of it, and the sheriff is building a case. You can either stop now and leave me alone, or I will pursue legal action and see you in prison. Tom laughed, mean and ugly. You cannot prove anything, Kincaid, and you are a fool if you think the law will help you. I have been here longer, have connections you do not. Maybe, but I have something you do not. I have truth on my side, and I have friends who will testify. Push me further, Tom, and you will find out just how far I am willing to go to protect what is mine. The two men faced each other, tension thick as the winter air. Finally, Tom spat on the ground. Get off my land. Gladly. Remember what I said. Russell and his companions rode away, and for several weeks there was peace. It seemed the confrontation had worked, or at least bought them time. Christmas came, and Olivia and Russell celebrated their first holiday as a married couple with Mrs. Chen and Samuel, exchanging small gifts and enjoying a feast Mrs. Chen prepared. But in early January, the fragile peace shattered. Russell was in Fairplay filing papers at the land office when Tom Sutton and his brothers cornered him in an alley. What they did not know was that Samuel had followed Russell to town, worried about exactly this scenario. When the Suttons drew their guns, Samuel fired a warning shot that brought the sheriff running. The sheriff arrived to find Tom Sutton pointing a gun at Russell, threats spilling from his mouth about how accidents happen to men who do not know when to leave. With multiple witnesses, including Samuel and two townspeople who had heard the commotion, the sheriff finally had enough evidence to arrest the Suttons. The trial happened quickly. With Samuel's testimony, the townspeople's accounts, and Russell's documentation of the months of harassment, all three Sutton brothers were convicted. Tom received 5 years in prison, his brothers 3 years each. Their ranch was put up for sale to pay their legal debts. The threat was over. Olivia, now showing the first small swell of her pregnancy, cried with relief when Russell came home and told her. That night they held each other and talked about the future, a future that was now secure. I want to buy the Sutton land, Russell said. Not the whole ranch, but the pasture that borders ours. It would give us room to expand, to build something even bigger for our children. Children, Olivia teased. We have only the one on the way. For now, but I want more. I want this house full of children, want to build something that will last generations. He kissed her gently. If you want that too, I do. I want everything with you. Winter passed slowly. Olivia taught until February, when the school board insisted she take time to prepare for the baby. She spent her days at the ranch, sewing baby clothes with Mrs. Chen, reading, and planning how to decorate the small room next to the master bedroom as a nursery. Russell worked on expanding the ranch, buying portions of the Sutton land at auction. With the threat gone, he could focus on building rather than defending. The Double K grew, its reputation as a well-run operation spreading throughout the territory. In April, during a late spring snowstorm, Olivia went into labor. Mrs. Chen and the doctor from Fairplay attended her while Russell paced downstairs, alternating between prayer and panic. After 12 hours of labor, Olivia delivered a healthy baby boy with his father's blue eyes and a lusty cry that proclaimed his strength. Russell held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you, Olivia." They named him Thomas Russell Kincaid, but called him Tom, reclaiming the name from the man who had caused them so much trouble and giving it new meaning. Baby Tom was healthy and happy, and he became the center of their world. Olivia discovered she loved motherhood as much as she loved teaching. She missed her students but knew she would return to the classroom eventually. For now, her focus was on Tom and on helping Russell build their ranch. The years passed in happiness. Olivia did return to teaching when Tom was 2, working part-time while Mrs. Chen watched the baby. The school board was happy to have her back, and Olivia found she could balance motherhood and teaching with Russell's support. When Tom was 3, Olivia got pregnant again, and this time delivered twin girls, Emily and Rose. The house Russell had built was now full of noise and laughter, exactly as he had dreamed. He proved to be an excellent father, patient and loving, teaching his children about the land and the animals, reading to them at night, carrying them on his shoulders. The Double K continued to prosper. Russell became known as one of the best ranchers in the territory, his cattle sought after for their quality. He hired several hands, built new barns, expanded the house to accommodate their growing family. But no matter how successful he became, he never forgot where he had come from or what mattered most. Olivia started a library in Fairplay, donating books and organizing fundraising. She also began writing children's stories, as she had always dreamed, tales of the West that her own children loved. 2 of her stories were published in Eastern magazines, bringing her a small measure of fame. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Russell took Olivia to the rise behind the house where he had first told her she was welcome anytime. It was a warm June evening, and they could see their children playing in the yard with Samuel, who had become like an uncle to them. "Do you remember the night you arrived?" Russell asked, pulling Olivia close. "I remember being cold and frightened and lost. I remember seeing you and knowing my life was about to change. I just did not know how much." He turned her to face him. "You gave me everything, Olivia. A family, happiness, purpose beyond just building a ranch. You made my house a home. You gave me warmth when I needed it most," Olivia said softly. "Not just that first night, but every night since. You gave me love, safety, partnership, children. You gave me a life I never dared to dream I could have." He kissed her, deep and lingering, the kiss of a man still deeply in love with his wife after 5 years of marriage. "Here is to 50 more years of warmth and love." 50 more years, Olivia agreed. They stood together watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of pink and gold, their children's laughter floating up on the evening air, and Olivia thought about the journey that had brought her here. She had left Boston running from fear, arrived in Colorado alone and desperate, and found everything she had never known she was searching for. She had arrived needing warmth one evening. Russell had given warmth for all evenings, for all seasons, for all the years of their life together. And it had been, was, and would continue to be enough. More than enough. It was everything. As the years continued to pass, the Double K Ranch became a fixture in Fairplay and the surrounding territory. Tom grew into a tall, serious boy who loved the land as much as his father did. Emily and Rose were inseparable, wild and joyful, keeping everyone on their toes. 2 more children followed, another boy named Henry and a girl named Sarah, filling the house to bursting with life and love. Olivia continued to teach, earning a reputation as one of the finest educators in Colorado. Her students went on to become teachers themselves, business people, ranchers, and even one who became a lawyer in Denver. She never forgot that education had given her options when she had none, and she made sure every child who entered her classroom left with the ability to read and write and think critically. Russell expanded the Double K until it was one of the largest and most successful ranches in the territory. He treated his workers fairly, paid them well, and several of them stayed for decades, becoming part of the extended ranch family. He served on the town council and helped establish better roads and infrastructure. He never forgot his humble beginnings and donated generously to help others who were struggling. Mrs. Chen and Samuel remained integral parts of their lives. Mrs. Chen helped raise all 5 children, loving them as if they were her own grandchildren. Samuel married a girl from town and built a house on ranch land, raising his own family there. The two families celebrated holidays together, worked together, and became bound by love as much as by employment. The Suttons never returned to Fairplay. After serving their sentences, they drifted elsewhere, and the land they had once owned became part of the Double K legacy. Sometimes Russell would ride across those acres and remember the fear and anger of those early days. Then he would ride home to Olivia and his children and feel only gratitude that those dark times were past. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Russell surprised Olivia with a trip to Denver. It was the first time they had been away from the ranch and children for more than a day, and it felt like a honeymoon. They stayed in a nice hotel, ate at fine restaurants, saw a theater performance, and simply enjoyed being alone together. "You ever miss Boston?" Russell asked one evening as they walked through the city streets. Olivia thought about it seriously. "No, I miss my parents, but I do not miss the city or that life. Everything I need and want is in Fairplay. You, our children, our home. That is my world now. You do not regret coming west?" "The hardships, the rough living, all of it, Russell Kincaid. Marrying you was the best decision I have ever made. Coming to Colorado gave me a life of purpose and meaning. I have work I love, children I adore, and a husband who has given me more happiness than I knew existed. Regret? Never." He kissed her right there on the street, not caring who saw, and Olivia laughed against his mouth, feeling young and carefree and deeply loved. They returned to the ranch to find everything running smoothly, their children happy and healthy, and life continuing in its comfortable rhythm. But that trip became a tradition, something they did every few years, a reminder that they were not just parents and ranchers but also husband and wife, lovers and partners. As the children grew, each developed their own personality and dreams. Tom, as expected, wanted to be a rancher like his father. He spent every free moment learning the business, asking questions, working alongside Russell. By the time he was 16, he was essentially the assistant foreman, and Russell knew the ranch would be in good hands when the time came to pass it on. Emily surprised everyone by developing a passion for medicine. After reading about female doctors in the East, she declared her intention to become a doctor herself. Russell and Olivia supported her dream, even though it was unconventional. They saved money and made plans to send her to medical school when she was old enough. Rose inherited her mother's love of teaching and announced at age 12 that she would be a teacher. Olivia began training her, letting her help with the younger students, and Rose flourished. Henry wanted to be a lawyer, inspired by the legal proceedings that had sent the Suttons to prison. And little Sarah, the baby, was still figuring out her path, but showed signs of her mother's writing talent. Olivia and Russell were proud of all their children, proud that they were growing into good people with dreams and ambitions. They had given their children not just a home but roots and wings, stability and encouragement to fly. On their 15th anniversary, The entire family gathered for a celebration at the ranch. Friends from town came, including Mrs. Patterson, now quite elderly but still sharp as a tack. The sheriff who had helped them against the Suttons, now retired, attended with his wife. It was a joyous gathering, full of food and music and storytelling. As the evening wound down and guests departed, Russell pulled Olivia away from the cleanup to the rise behind the house, their special place. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the air was warm with summer. 15 years, Russell said, pulling her into his arms. 15 years since I saw you standing in the cold and knew I had to help you. Best night of my life, Olivia said. The beginning of everything good. I love you more now than I did then, though I did not think that was possible. You have given me a life beyond my wildest dreams. We built it together, Olivia corrected. Every bit of happiness, every success, we did it as partners. They stood together in comfortable silence, and Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that cold November evening 15 years ago to this warm June night, they had built something beautiful. A marriage based on love and respect, a family full of laughter and affection, a ranch that prospered, a place in the community. They had faced challenges and overcome them together. They had grown individually and as a couple. They had created a legacy that would outlast them. "What are you thinking?" Russell asked, a question he had asked countless times over the years. "That I am happy, that I am grateful, that I love you and our life together, that every cold night and warm morning, every challenge and triumph has been worth it because I was with you." He kissed her temple, a gesture of tenderness that never got old. "You arrived needing warmth one evening and I tried to give it, but the truth is you gave me warmth too. You warmed a house that was just empty rooms. You warmed a life that was all work and no joy. You are my warmth, Olivia." Then, now, always. Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. After 15 years, he could still move her to tears with his words. "I love you, Russell Kincaid. I love you, Olivia Kincaid." They walked back to the house hand in hand, to their children and their life. And Olivia thought that this was what happiness looked like. Not a single perfect moment, but a lifetime of moments strung together like beads on a necklace, each one precious, all of them adding up to a beautiful whole. The years continued to unfold in grace and joy. The children grew and pursued their dreams. Tom took over more of the ranch operations, proving himself a worthy successor to Russell. Emily went east to medical school, writing letters home that Olivia treasured, describing her studies and her determination to return to Colorado to practice. Rose began teaching alongside her mother, and the school board eventually hired her officially. Henry studied law through correspondence, and with a lawyer in Denver who took him as an apprentice. Sarah published her first story in a magazine at age 15, beginning her own writing career. Russell and Olivia grew older together, their hair graying, their faces lining, but their love only deepening. They still made love, still laughed together, still talked for hours. The passion of their youth had matured into something even richer, a partnership so complete that they often knew what the other was thinking without words. On their 25th anniversary, the family organized a massive celebration. All 5 children were there. Emily home from her medical practice in Denver, where she had opened a clinic serving poor families. Tom brought his new wife, a sweet girl from a neighboring ranch. Rose was courting the new school teacher from the next town over. Henry had just passed the bar exam. Sarah was working on her first novel. Friends and neighbors packed the ranch house and yard. There was an enormous feast, music and dancing, speeches and toasts. Russell and Olivia stood at the center of it all, overwhelmed by the love surrounding them. The sheriff, now very old, raised his glass and said, "25 years ago, I watched Russell Kincaid take in a stranger who needed help. I have watched them build a life together that has blessed this entire community." To Russell and Olivia, who prove every day that love and hard work can create miracles. The crowd cheered, and Olivia felt tears streaming down her face. Russell held her close, and she could feel his heart beating steady and strong against hers. Later, when the party had wound down and their children were cleaning up, Russell and Olivia slipped away to their bedroom. They stood at the window looking out at the ranch spread below, lit by moonlight and lamplight from various buildings. "We did well," Russell said softly. "Look at what we built." "We did," Olivia agreed, "and it will continue long after we are gone. Our children, their children, all of them will carry forward what we started." "I have one regret," Russell said, and Olivia looked at him in surprise. "What?" "That I did not marry you sooner. That we did not have more time together, though we have been blessed with many years." Olivia smiled and kissed him. "We have had exactly the time we were meant to have, and we have years yet ahead of us," and they did. More years of warmth and love, of watching their children thrive and their grandchildren being born. Years of sunrises over the mountains and starlit nights. Years of work and rest, challenge and triumph, sorrow and joy. Through it all, Russell kept his promise. He gave Olivia warmth not just for one evening but for all their evenings together. He loved her, protected her, partnered with her, laughed with her, grew with her. And she did the same for him, the woman who had arrived cold and alone and had stayed to build a life and a legacy. On their 30th anniversary, too old now for big parties, they had a quiet dinner with just their children and grandchildren. Surrounded by family, Russell raised his glass for a toast. 30 years ago, I married the woman I loved. It was the smartest thing I ever did. Olivia, you are my partner, my love, my home. Here is to 30 more years. They laughed, knowing 30 more years was unlikely at their age, but raising their glasses anyway, because love did not count years. Love simply existed, moment by moment, day by day, warming cold evenings and celebrating bright mornings. Olivia looked around the table at faces she loved, at the legacy she and Russell had created, and felt a deep peace. She had fled Boston in fear and desperation. She had arrived in Fairplay alone and uncertain. But she had found Russell, had found love, had found home, and that made every moment of the journey worthwhile. They lived many more years, Russell and Olivia Kincaid, growing old together on the Double K Ranch. They saw all their children married and settled. They held great-grandchildren in their arms. They watched their ranch continue to prosper under Tom's management. They saw Emily's medical practice save lives, Rose's students flourish, Henry argue cases before judges, Sarah's novels become bestsellers. When Russell finally passed at the age of 78, it was peacefully in his sleep, with Olivia beside him as she had been for over 50 years. She held his hand as he took his last breath and whispered that she loved him, that she would see him again. She lived 2 more years without him, years that were harder than any she had known but also full of family love. Her children and grandchildren surrounded her with affection. She continued to write, finishing one last book that was published posthumously. And on a quiet winter evening, very much like the evening she had first arrived in Fairplay, Olivia Kincaid passed away in the house Russell had built, in the bed they had shared. She was buried beside Russell on the rise behind the house, the place where they had stood so many times over the years, looking out at the land they loved. Their graves faced the mountains, and on the headstone were simple words. She arrived needing warmth one evening. He gave warmth for all evenings. The Double K Ranch continued, passed down through generations, exactly as Russell had dreamed. And the story of how it began, with a cold November evening and a rancher who offered shelter to a stranger, became family legend, told and retold to each new generation as an example of how love and kindness can create something lasting. Because in the end, that is what mattered. Not the acres or the cattle or the success, but the love that had built it all. The warmth that Russell had offered and Olivia had accepted, that had grown into a fire burning bright enough to light multiple generations. They had built a legacy not just of land and buildings, but of love. And that legacy endured, warming cold evenings for years and years after they were gone. Proof that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple act of kindness on a cold Colorado night.